Hello everyone, Creative Fun here, back again with another video, and as you can see we're once again in the cockpit of the AJS37 Viggen. Now this is going to be a three-part tutorial series on a comprehensive tutorial on how to land the Viggen using the various different systems and navigational modes that exist with Viggen and its capabilities as well. Now here in the first part we're going to do a bog standard visual approach landing. We're going to check a little bit of the hub symbology and check out some standard figures like approach speed and the angle of attack when touching down. In all three tutorials I'm going to be using myself of the famous thrust reverser on the Viggen, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to use that as effective as possible. So in these three parts, the first part, as I said, is going to be a visual approach. The second part of this tutorial is going to be a bad weather landing. We're going to use the navigation system alongside the tactical instrument landing navigation system to align ourselves with the runway as we pass through a cloud coverage, and then we're going to finish that off with a visual approach as soon as we have made visual contact with the runway in the second part. In the third part, we are going to have a look at the Viggen's ability to land on very short runways and or roads, and how to refuel and rearm the aircraft in a situation like that. Now, one more thing I want to add is that the Viggen's navigation system and tactical instrument landing system is fairly old and not as accurate as the more modern ones in, for example, the Mirage or the A10 or F-15 and so on. So it is not ideal for landing in really bad weather, very foggy and almost zero visual situation or zero visibility situation. So please keep that in mind, that regardless how much we can rely on the navigation system, how well we align ourselves up with the navigation system, it's still going to be a little bit off, and it does require us at least a couple of seconds of having a visual on the runway and aligning ourselves manually with the runway before we can touch down. So keep that in mind. So let's get this tutorial started. Now before I unpause this, we're actually going to cheat a little bit and do the standard thing that you have to do when you're doing a visual approach, and that is to visually locate your runway. And as you can see here, we have it to the right of us, right there, Kutaisi Air Base. A very good thing is also to have an idea of which runway we're landing on. In this case, we're landing on runway 08, which I think has an actual heading of 075. So that is information that is very good to have, regardless of whether you're doing a visual approach or not. One more thing also, the navigation system here, it's very important that you have programmed this correctly and set it to and program the landing navigation waypoints with the correct runway codes. Please refer to the manual for that or some YouTube video that talks about the landing navigation system. So it's important that everything is set correctly in the computer. It's also very important that you have the correct QFE, and that should be if you have a pre-made mission with pre-made waypoints, you can find it in your kneeboard. Otherwise, you'll just have to figure that out by yourself, how to set the QFE. It should be you should be able to use the default situation if you start up in the air anyway. So that is pretty much it. We are going to start. I'm going to unpause the simulation. And we're going to begin our pre-approach procedures. Now, the first thing you want to do is actually to set your navigation to landing. So we have the L1 clicked in there, and you're going to see here that navigation needle is going to point towards the runway, which is there. Perfect. So we're going to start descending a little bit here. We're going to keep an eye on our runway. It's right there, not going anywhere. We are going to turn on our navigation lights, and we're going to turn on the landing lights. Fortunately, for some reason, the landing light button doesn't seem to work. It's supposed to be right here according to manual. So I just bound it to my keyboard, and you can do so as well. Since we're going to use the thrust reverser in all our landings in this tutorial series, I'm going to arm the thrust reverser, and a green light indicates it has been armed. Finally, we are going to enter the visual approach landing master mode. So we're just going to set the switch here to landing P/O, which is the visual approach. And we're going to talk a little bit about the HUD symbology shortly as we turn into the runway. Now it's very important that you maintain a proper approach speed, and the proper approach speed for the Viggen is 550 kph. So as you can see here, we're a little bit on the fast side here, but that's going to be corrected momentarily as we turn around and extend our landing gear. So that is pretty much it for preparation in terms of landing. So what we're going to do now is going to turn into our airfield here, and we're going to keep an eye on this. Preferably we want this needle to point at the 7.5 when we turn into it. And we're also going to keep our descent a little bit here. We're going to be pretty low when we turn in. So we're not quite there yet. We're going to fly almost perpendicular to the runway here until we're going to put it on our 3 o'clock until 7.5 is aligned up with the runway. It's moving pretty quickly here. We're on 6.5, very soon 7, so we're going to slowly start turning. And as we turn now, we're going to extend our landing gear. And it's important to keep an eye on the speed here. We're still a bit fast. And we're going to turn into the runway right about now. So we overshot a little bit, but I think we're pretty well aligned to make a final approach here. Now I'm going to keep working on the speed. Keep an eye on your speed and throttle for a little bit longer. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the HUD symbology. Before we do that, we're going to put the reflector glass down a little bit, help us be able to keep an eye on the HUD symbology as we do the final approach. Now the HUD symbology is very easy here. You want this little dot here to point at the start of the runway. That's it. As long as that dot is pointed on the runway and your heading indicator is also pointed at the runway at the same time, you are perfectly aligned. These lines here indicates a descent angle of 2.86 degrees, which is coincidentally the perfect descent angle for the Viggen. So remember, keep an eye on the throttle and keep an eye on the HUD symbology here. And we're getting pretty good here actually. We have the landing gear retracted. The Viggen's flaps are automatic, so we don't have to worry about that. Now we are going to stop concentrating on the speed and start concentrating on the angle of attack. Viggen, when you land it, you don't care about the airspeed, you care about your angle of attack. So what ideally we want here is an angle of attack about around 10 to 12 degrees. We want 12 degrees of angle of attack as we touch down. And as once again, you don't have to care about the descent rate or your speed, only the angle of attack, and that your heading indicator is pointing at where the start of the runway is. So as you can see here, while we're doing a couple of simple corrections here, we're doing pretty good. We are still a little bit too fast, as you can see by our angle of attack. So I'm going to slow down a little bit and let our angle of attack catch up with us. As we touch down now, it's important to know that the Viggen has an auto rudder system that balances the aircraft so it doesn't oscillate as we touch down and execute the thrust reversers. So do not touch the rudder when you touch down. Let the computer handle the rudder. And if you need to adjust your orientation of the aircraft a little bit, use your left and right brakes instead. So as you can see here, we're doing pretty good. We're going to speed up a little bit here, a little bit high angle of attack. That's fine. We are going to touch down momentarily. There we go. And we are a little bit high angle of attack, but that looks good. Let's gently put her down. Slam the nose down on the ground. We have heard the thrust reverser executing, so full gas, full brakes. As the red light there turns on, throttle back. And we are down. Turn off the thrust reverser and then come to a complete stop. So as you can see, it gets a little bit hectic right before you land. My angle of attack was a little bit high. Now the Viggen can land with an angle of attack of 15. That's usually used for when you're landing on extremely short runways as a road, for example. Or we were well within the safety parameters of the Viggen, and the very nice little beeping sound told us that we were going a little bit too slow. So that's a good indicator. But a perfect landing actually, if I say so myself. We're fairly centered on the runway. We only wobbled a little bit as we touched down, and I accidentally pushed a little bit on the rudder. So that's fine. We didn't wobble too much, and we're safely down on the ground. So that's it for this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. Please join me again in the next part, where we're going to have a look at landing the Viggen in low visibility. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter and all those cool stuff. And once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.